Hey, it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're zooming in and focusing in on a very high volume of questions and inquiries that I have been receiving here on the channel, and that is to go more into depth into the dynamics, the relationship dynamics with a female psychopath. So I'm going to be addressing that in our videos today. And before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to viewers who have recently made a donation to the channel, particularly to a wonderful, very generous viewer we have in the Louisiana area, a lovely southern part of the United States, down by New Orleans. It's a very rich cultural area, and we have a very wonderful viewer in that area who has made donations as well as contributions and insights through comments and relaying of experience. So I want to give a huge shout out, much love to you, and we appreciate your viewership so much and your contributions as well. Love you so much. Thank you for relaying all your heartfelt experiences here on the channel. We have a number of different very intensive experiences that viewers have relayed, and I want to address that particularly as it relates to a female psychopath. Now, especially as it relates to what I'm going to address is kind of a cognitive nurturing or a cognitive empathy or a cognitive caring. Now, these individuals are operating by a neurological network that is very much wired differently than quote unquote the mass of humanity or the mass of people at large. In other words, based on their neurological wiring, they are lacking in a conscience, which means the prefrontal cortex, many of the neurological areas there that are responsible for judgment, morality, decision-making, choice, as well as risk and reward. That sort of center is really kind of located in our brain. As you know, it's not located in your big toe. It's not located in your elbow. It's really in the brain area. I mean, the function of the brain is the mind, and that is, consciousness, to think, to make choices, decisions. So that is the function of the mind brain, which is, different from the heart. So the heart will feel, but the brain has the ability to think, which we call basically cognitions. And that is something that you can direct. Oftentimes people are operating mostly subconsciously, so they're automatic, so they're not really well aware or informed really of this function of this very powerful organ. So it's really very important to become educated about this, as well as kind of how it plays out and how it directs and influences your life choices, also those who you relate to, how you adapt to them, and also to understand that the pathology of this very central and very important organ and how it relates to relationships, how it relates to marriages, how it relates to child rearing, or even in the corporate setting. So, for example, like your employer. So if we look at really the neurological wiring in the female psychopath, there is a very, there's also a high sensitivity to dopamine. Dopamine is that reward neurotransmitter chemical. So dopamine is that reward. It's when you feel excited, when you feel driven, when you feel exactly that, rewarded. You think, oh, yay, oh, good. You have a surge of dopamine. It's a feel-good chemical. There's also a lot of other neurotransmitters, serotonin, a lot of the adrenals that give you a lot of energy. All these are kind of implicated. The oxytocin, these are sort of feel-good and bonding chemicals. Now, the psychopath now, they have a high sensitivity to dopamine, as well as a lack. So they're going to have an overproduction of this reward chemical, especially as it relates to high-risk behavior. So they're high-risk behaviors that are oftentimes implicated in social deviance. Deviance, which means away from the norm. So it's in violation to regular, normal bonding relationship standards, which we will live by. So it's kind of like what what your mother told you, don't talk with your mouth full. These are sort of societal norms, or don't hurt others, or play fair on the playground. So these are, what we call moral implications or moral judgments. And then usually children will say, okay, I want to have friends, or, so it's part of learning. It's part of what we call moral development or character development. Now, there is a deficit neurologically, or a disorder in these areas that relate to the ability to have empathy or feel for others in a natural sort of what we call mirror neuron synaptic connection. In mirror neurons, basically, if you were to see somebody get hit by a car, you would have a gut reaction. So you would have an immediate reaction. That's your mirror neurons. You're like, oh my God, ow, you can feel the pain. You feel that surge of adrenaline. You want to go rush and help. It's a natural reaction. It's built in, it's part of your normal wiring. And, you'll feel this when you watch movies, or you feel, hear documentaries, or you watch the news and you say, that's so disgusting, that's so awful. These are your motor your mirror neurons. You have the ability to feel other people's feelings. Now, in the psychopath, they're really largely not experiencing this. So they don't really have the same sort of empathy. They can switch it on, though, when it relates to, instructing them. So they can, in their brain, they can intellectually understand empathy. So they can see it, but they don't necessarily feel it and have that as part of their attachment bonding then to others. So, for example, a lot of the bonding takes place, with your relationships when you have empathy. You understand the needs of another. You understand the needs to, have responsibility, to raise and guide a child, to be connected and close with a spouse, to be able to work as a team, perhaps in the workplace. Now, you can imagine, and also, studies have been shown that female psychopaths, they don't, so it's more of a cognitive sort of, it's a very sort of cognitive or very distant nurturing. So it's not really in the heart. So it's very confusing because they can put on a show, they can apparently seem to be raising their child, but they have no emotional connection to them. They can be as distant as, 50,000 miles, where they really have no empathy, just like for that, for example, that, seeing that car accident, they really don't have that same sort of guttural reaction. There's a deficit. And so with child rearing, the important thing is this is your closest caregiver. I mean, this person is the one with the role ascribed to, you are mine. These are my children. I have this very specific role, closeness, and what we call a bond with this person. And oftentimes that is your number one leader, role model, mentor that you look up to and then pattern yourself off of. So, and then the mother has an instinctual, I'm going to say most mothers have this instinctual need, or connection with their children, and their need then becomes to take care of the child. So it's like ingrained in them, and they can then what we call, engage in child raising, rearing, helping their child develop through those developmental stages successfully, and that bonding is necessary. It is that closeness, it is that, what we call kinship. And so the psychopath does not have this in the heart. So if we look at the heart, that is if we talk about someone who is heart-centered, they're caring, they're nurturing, they are looking out for that intrinsic human good. They're able to resonate and kind of live, from the direction of their heart, heart-directed, purpose-directed. They're not all caught up in their heart, or they're in their mind. So, and of course, healthy living is to have a balance of the two. But the female psychopath is very much it's very much in the brain. So if you can look at your relationship with them and see how the confusion would arise when they're putting on a cognitive or intellectual display of their abilities, but it is not heart-centered, it is not heartfelt. It is based on the neurology of their, of the process of these neurochemicals. So it's something that, might have been present, or, you might see it exemplified, and then you wonder why it is not a sustaining relationship, because they do not feel for their children, they do not feel for their spouse, they do not feel for their employment, they do not feel for that world at large. They don't experience those same emotions. It's just, they do not have the capacity. They are not feeling fear the way that most people would feel fear, and then, give that short term, let me save my child or let me resolve this. So they really do not feel these same range of emotions. In fact, psychopaths have been, studied, those who presented in prisons, and the presence of psychopaths in prisons are much more largely male, because they are more prone to enact these violent crimes. In other words, they don't feel the same remorse or stopgap measure to, say this is wrong. I should play fair on the playground. They're not operating by this. They don't have that same self-limiting, neurology. They just, there's no brakes on the car. And oftentimes, they feel or self-assess that they are quote unquote better, more powerful, or, exempt from this, and they're not so held back. So you'll see this disinhibiting behavior where you're like, most people would not do that, and then it'll catch you out of the corner of your eye, and you'll say, most people wouldn't do that. And then, the violation of societal norms, family norms, child rearing norms, in the workplace where you see that they're doing certain things that seem out of line, and it's always very self-serving in nature. They're trying to obtain information, resources, connections. They're trying to get, we call that, the very fraudulent business person. So, and, this is very, very devastating and dangerous, and creates a lot of harm on a very large scale level. When you talk about, family rearing, leaving that devastation, and so people question, why is this so? I did not have anything to, I did not deserve this. I am a loving, caring human being, yet they don't have the ability to mirror you in the same way. So that is what is so very heart-wrenching, I think, for a lot of people who have encountered this person, is they have such an allure to be close. So there's a cognitive, emotional manipulation with which they engage in through their body language, through the things that they say, that they do, the button pushing that they will engage in. So people get seduced or sucked in, or thinking this person, but it's cognitive caring, cognitive empathy, and it's very cognitive attachment. So it's not really heartfelt. They can switch it off, where it's just not relevant for them. And so, these individuals, they, it's a very deliberate sort of harm. And so they take reward or pleasure by seeing others suffer, and by seeing others hurt, and by seeing others being damaged or laying waste. They get a reward from this. So just like you might have a reward from making a nice meal, or you might thrive on something on a day-to-day basis that you feel rewarded by. You might feel good about helping others. You might feel good about being a good person. You might feel good about, these other things. So think about how you personally are rewarded in your life, and how then on the flip side, this individual is rewarded by harming others. So as you can see, you do not want to engage with these types of individuals and be their source of reward or pleasure, because it is going to result in a very deliberate and calculated psychological bonding, which is a very cognitively, emotionally, and predatory, gaslighting, and cognitive dissonance sort of emotional entanglement that they will create, which is very much of their own design and divisiveness. So it's designed to kind of separate you from your own internal guiding network. So it can be very serious and it can really create a lot of harm in a number of people. So not only the people who they're close to, but in a work setting, whole organizations that are run by this, making decisions, making choices. Remember our prefrontal cortex, and getting rewarded from, the damage to others, the destruction to others. So as you can see on a large scale basis, when these sort of peoples are in control in organizations, it can create disaster, financial ruin, and a really sort of shredding of human fabric and humanity. And it's these people are also have an insatiable need to be in control, so they have that cognitive ability to get there because they don't have any brakes on the car. They don't stop themselves where normally most people would say, let's consider this, let's factor this in. It's a no issue situation for them, so they're able to commit crimes, commit hurt, commit danger, commit destruction, where most people would say, no way, we're not doing that. So become aware of this, and we're going to be really focusing in on understanding, if you have, been, sort of a victim of this, that, cognitive nurturing, cognitive caring, and how it can be so very confusing and create a really sort of psychological terror in those people who are very close to them. And it's something that creates a lot of rumination, and a lot of fear combined with sort of an emotional rewiring of connection, and it can create a real severing and a real fear and a real paranoia in those people, which can be very difficult to reprogram or deprogram because it's so very severe. And yes, the psychopath is aware of what they are doing on that cognitive, intellectual basis. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.